part of being an adult action figure collector is having to run around and pick up store exclusives, or what are called customized programs by the toy industry. Now, a lot of us find these very frustrating because they're sometimes hard to find, and as the definition of an exclusive, they're only available at one retailer. But honestly, from working in the toy industry for 20 years, etc., I actually view these very differently as I see them, well, not only as a necessary part of selling in a product line, but they provide slots to do figures that might not otherwise get made. If it wasn't for exclusives, there's a lot of toys that just, honestly, wouldn't exist. Now, when it comes to designing retail exclusives, the retailers kind of ask toy companies to just, well, magically make them happen. It's sort of, when they say jump, the toy companies have to say how high. Because in the case of exclusives, retailers really have all the cards in their hand. It's usually they're telling the manufacturers what they want, when they want, where they want. So that also means they kind of have the leeway of canceling exclusives from initial B sheets all the way through production. It's kind of like, hey, you said you wanted this toy exclusive customized program and now you don't. Okay, never mind. Forget about it. That happens quite a lot. And it's sort of like being stuck, especially if the toy has gone through enough production that you may have already tooled the item, and that's the one-time capital investment that's going to cost upwards to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Toy companies might invest this, and then suddenly the retailer says, oh, yep, we're not interested anymore, and you kind of have to smile, nod, and walk away. So I want to show you some signs of how to identify these type of toys. A great example is the Power of the Jedi Star Wars Carbon Freezing Chamber. This was a playset that had a ton of really cool kid features. It had projectile launchers, it had a carbonite block that you could put a figure in, and because it was made of a squishy kind of spandexy material, you could sort of see the figure's impression inside of it. So no matter who you quote-unquote froze in carbonite, it was it was a fun play feature. And it came with that little Cloud City wing guard guy there. And to say that he looked dated is an understatement. And that's because this item was developed as a retail exclusive for, well, I guess you could say, well earlier than Power of the Jedi. By Power of the Jedi, design had moved forward. Things had progressed, and figures were more articulated, they had more accessories, and a lot of that was due to the 300th Boba Fett, which really reset the standard for 3 3/4 Star Wars figures in terms of both an authentic 3 3/4 scale, making the weapons and accessories actually sort of correctly sized instead of these oversized guns. We got correctly sized blasters that fit into characters' hands. So this Boba Fett was basically better than any Boba Fett that had come before, simply, well, it reset everything. And having this figure from the Carbonite chamber come out after this made it really stand out, and you could tell it didn't quite belong. So in order to dispose of this inventory, which had been developed, it was sold only through the Star Wars Fan Club, which meant adult collectors were getting this toy specifically designed for children, because the playset had all these kid-based features like projectile launchers and the carbonite block. So you can tell that when you see an item like this and it's only offered online or through a fan club, but it clearly is meant for kids, because it wasn't developed for collectors. Another great example in the Star Wars world are the Galoob Micro Machine book sets that came out at the very tail end of the Star Wars Micro Machine series. So these were actually pretty cool. They were based on some of the expanded universe novels that were huge in the 90s. And if you opened up the book package, you could see different ships and minifigures from the book inside. It was a really cool package execution, and it was a great way to top off your Star Wars Galoob Micro Machine collection. But yes, once again, these were not sold in stores at first. They were only sold by calling, I think, like a 1-800 number. I remember I was at a cocktail party. I kind of want to say it was Jeff John's wedding, and I was introduced to a woman who was the brand manager over the Galoob Micro Machines. I was like, oh, Scott, come over here. You got to meet this person. She's also in toys. And we got to chatting. And she had told me that, she was overseeing this Galoob set. And I said, "Oh yeah, hey, those book sets at the end, those were retailer items that were canceled, customized, right?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, how did you know that?" I was like, "Well, it's got all the classic signs that point to being a canceled retailer exclusive. Essentially, a really cool item that would have kid interest that was not sold in stores or was sold in a channel that only really adults would know about. In this case, you had to call an 800 number. It checked all the boxes. Eventually, these sets were clearanced out through KB's and some other retailers, but that was at the very tail end of their distribution. Another interesting example, not an exclusive, but again an item that was developed, when I was on the JLU line at Mattel, we had this set that had Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, and the Ray. When I was looking for a JLU item to develop for San Diego Comic-Con and going through literally Mattel's books, I found this item which had been fully developed and tooled but never shipped. It wasn't an exclusive or a customized, but it was a mainline item that had been completed. So the only way to get Ray and Hawkgirl was through this set, and since it hadn't actually made it to retail, it was let to San Diego Comic-Con because the money had already been spent. So that's basically what you look for, is an item that clearly kind of doesn't fit. It feels like interesting. So that brings us all to this He-Man 4-pack that's being offered on Mattel Creations. So you'll notice you get 4 different He-Men, and they have some really cool packaging. It's the only way to get the New Adventures of He-Man on the Origins body, as well as the, Netflix CGI He-Man. Is that what he's officially being called? I don't know. Whatever the official name is, this figure done on the Origins body. But in addition to getting these 2 brand new, cool, sculpted figures, you also have to pick up 2 existing figures. The original He-Man from 2020, and the 2000X He-Man, which is actually on shelf now on a standard Masters of the Universe Origins card back. In this 4-pack, you get these figures on different card backs, or at least this guy's on a 2000X card back. But otherwise, it's the same figure you already have, just with some more metallic paint or metallic deco on the shield. So slightly different, but more or less the same figure, paired with 2 new figures. So this is a perfect example of clearly an item that was developed as a retail exclusive, but the retailer backed off at the very end, and production had probably already started. So what do you do with it? Well, you find a way to sell it directly to collectors. The Galoob toys were sold on an 800 line, and, well, these are being sold on MattelCreations.com at a very high price point because of the very low run they're doing. So that's really how you find items that retailers just said, never mind. And this happens all the time, and it happens very late in the process. You basically have to look for a toy that checks off all the boxes. It looks very kid-friendly, and it's being distributed only for collectors. It's kind of a no-win situation. Collectors wind up having to pay more, and kids miss out on what could be a really great toy. But that's what happens to these toys. When retailers back off and when they have all the cards, you have to do something with the toy if it's already been tooled, try to make some money back. What do you think? Are there other examples you can think of toys that were clearly developed as retail exclusives but wind up on a adult collector channel only? Let me know in the comments below. I've thought of a few examples, but I'd love to know other ones you can think of. Let me know. Share this video if you can. It's the best way to show support for this channel, and I so much appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next one.